Hello. Hello, my son, my daughter. Come closer. Sit here with me for a moment. You know life. It has a curious way of testing us, doesn't it? It takes us down arid, dry paths. Paths where our faith seems small and the world immense and cold. Today, I want to tell you a story. It's not a story of distant kings or prophets. It's a story of a man like you and me. A man named Lucas. Lucas. Oh, poor Lucas. He carried a weight on his shoulders that went beyond his muscles. It was the weight of his legacy. His father, Samuel, a man with hands as thick as bark and a heart as big as the sky, had passed away years ago. And he left Lucas the farm. That patch of land. It wasn't just dirt. It was Samuel's memory. It was the smell of his mother's breakfast, the sound of laughter at Sunday lunches. Every plank of the house had been nailed together with sweat and prayer. And Lucas was losing everything. It wasn't sudden. No. Misfortune rarely knocks on the door with a bang. It sneaks in, like a leak. First, it was the drought that destroyed the harvest. Then, the bank, which had previously been smiling, changed its tone. Interest. Oh, interest. They're like termites. They eat away at the structure from within, silently, until everything threatens to collapse. Lucas tried. My God, how he tried! He sold the cattle, sold the tractor. But the debt only grew. Now, on the kitchen table, where his mother had once broken bread, lay a letter. Cold. Impersonal. That. Smell of printer ink and official paper. The auction date was set. In 30 days, the hammer would fall. In 30 days, Samuel's legacy would turn to dust. Lucas didn't sleep. How could he sleep? He paced the house in the early hours. The creaking floorboards beneath his feet seemed to groan with him. He sat on the porch, looking up at the dark sky, so full of stars, and felt like the most forgotten man in the universe. Father, my father, he whispered. Don't you see? Have you abandoned me here? His pain wasn't just the pain of losing the land. It was the pain of failing. Failing the father he loved so much. Failing the memory of a lifetime of work. He looked at his own hands, smooth, different from Samuel's hands, and felt shame. The tragedy wasn't just financial, it was a tragedy of the soul. The bank didn't care about his pain, the auctioneer didn't care about his memories. The world only wanted the numbers, and Lucas's numbers were over. The end was there, visible, palpable like the cold wood of the chair. What does a man do when prayer seems to bounce off the ceiling and return, like a hollow echo? And the days. Oh, the days began to fly by. You know when you want time to stop, and it seems to speed up. It was like that. Those 30 days became 20. 20 became 15. That piece of paper on the kitchen table seemed to pulse. Lucas woke every day with a lump in his throat. The sun rose, and it was a spectacle of orange and pink. But for Lucas, it was just another day less. He carried on, out of sheer stubbornness. He fed the few chickens that remained. He mended a fence that would soon no longer be his. You know, my son, crossing the desert, it's terrible. But the worst thing about the desert is when you've walked so far that you start to believe there's no more promised land. You just walk. Lucas stopped asking for a miracle. He began asking for strength. Strength to bear the shame. Strength to box up his father's memories. He went to other banks. He knocked on the doors of distant relatives. And all he heard was the soft sound of the pen scratching the paper. We can't, Lucas. The situation is complicated, Lucas. We're so sorry, Lucas. The "we're so sorry" echoed in his ears as he drove home in the old truck that creaked louder than the gate. He watched the sunset, and the shadow of the house lengthen, like an arm trying to hold him there. One night, it was raining, that fine cold rain that seems to wash our souls from the outside. The auction was a week away. A week, 7 days. He was in the living room. The silence was so thick, he could hear the clock on the wall. Tick, tock. Each tick was a step closer to destiny. Each tock was the sound of a nail in the coffin of his hopes. He looked at his father's portrait on the wall. Samuel was smiling, a smile of someone who knew things. of someone who trusted. "Trust in what, Dad?" Lucas shouted at the portrait. "Trust in this? In this shame? Where is the God you spoke so much about? Where is he, while your sweat is being sold for nothing?" Lucas's faith was stretched, like a thin wire about to snap. He was tired. It wasn't just physical fatigue. It was a weariness of the soul, an exhaustion of waiting for help that, visibly, wouldn't come. He curled up on the old couch, and for the first time in years, he didn't pray. He just gave in to despair. The desert seemed to have won. There were 3 days left. 3 days. The house already had that air of abandonment, cardboard boxes in the corners, that smell of dust, and the end. Lucas decided he needed to start emptying his father's closet. It was the task he dreaded most. Opening those doors was like opening the past. He turned the cold porcelain knob. The door creaked, and the smell, oh, the smell of cedar, of the light tobacco Samuel used to smoke in his pipe, and of time. They were there, the neatly pressed shirts, the suits, and, in a corner, hanging, the old coat. It wasn't just any coat. It was Samuel's winter coat, thick, heavy wool, the one he wore on days of biting wind. Lucas took it off the hanger. The weight of the coat surprised him. It felt heavier than he remembered. He hugged it. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he felt his father's embrace. The rough fabric against his face, wet now with the tears he couldn't hold back. It was a goodbye to that smell, to that strength. He reached into his pocket, an automatic gesture, a son's gesture, seeking comfort perhaps, and his fingers touched something small, hard, and cold. He frowned. He pulled his hand away, and in his palm lay a key, an old key, small, brass, with a strangely shaped head, almost like a flower. It was slightly greenish with age, vermilion. Lucas looked at that key and felt nothing. No revelation, no heavenly music, just confusion. A key? A key to what? The truck? No. The front door? No. A padlock? Maybe. A padlock to something that had already turned to rust. He shook his head. How ironic. His father leaves him a key, a useless key, a key to nothing. With the entire house being taken, what good was a small brass key? He put it in his own pants pocket. A dead weight, one last, meaningless riddle, left by Samuel. He went back to packing his things, his heart even heavier. The sign, if it was one, seemed like another cruel joke of fate. A key that didn't open any door. The next day dawned gray. 2 days to go. The key in Lucas's pocket felt heavy. It bothered him. He took it out, looked at it, and put it away. Useless. He was in the office, the place where Samuel spent hours, doing math, reading his Bible. The mahogany desk was covered in dust. Lucas needed to empty it. Old bills, pens that no longer wrote, rusty paper clips. He opened the bottom drawer. The bottom. And there, under a pile of old, musty-smelling ledgers, he saw her. A box. It wasn't large. It was a dark wooden box, perhaps rosewood. Simple, no carvings, except for one, right in the center of the lid. The same flower, the same design. That was on the key's head. Lucas's heart skipped a beat. He knew that box. It had always been there, his whole life. Father's box. When he was a boy, he'd asked what was inside. And Samuel had smiled, that calm smile, and said, "Things, my son, things for the right time." And Lucas never asked again. It was just his father's box. He brushed the dust off the lid and saw the lock, small, dark, almost identical to the keyhole in his pocket. A shiver. A shiver that started at the back of his neck and ran down his spine. He reached into his pocket. The cold metal felt different now. It felt alive. He pulled out the key. The flower pattern in the brass. The flower pattern. in the wood. It was a connection. Decades. That box had been there for decades, locked, and the key had been in a coat pocket, hanging in a dark closet, waiting. Lucas looked from the key to the box. His hand trembled. It wasn't despair anymore. It was something else, a feeling he couldn't name. Fear. Hope. He swallowed. The silence in the office seemed deafening. The ticking of the clock now sounded like a countdown, not to the end, but to what? What would Samuel, a simple countryman, keep so secret for so long? Lucas's hand, can you see it? The trembling hand, holding that small key. He brought it to the lock. The metal scraped lightly. He hesitated. What if there was nothing? What if it was just another disappointment? He took a deep breath and turned. There wasn't a loud click. It was a click, a sound, dry, precise. The sound of a mechanism, carefully made, that hadn't been opened in a long, long time. Lucas's heart was pounding in his chest, like a drum. He lifted the lid. The smell of old paper, of ink, and something else. Something sweet. There was no gold. There were no jewels. What Lucas saw was paper. A sheaf of papers, tied with a faded blue satin ribbon, and on top of it all, an envelope with his name on it. Lucas. Samuel's handwriting. He opened the envelope. The letter was short. My dear son, if you're reading this, it's because the desert has arrived, and I'm probably already seeing everything from up here, beside the Father. Don't despair. Your father here on earth was never a rich man, but our Father in heaven is the owner of everything. I didn't save any money, Lucas. Money is carried away by the wind. I planted seeds, seeds that only God can water. Beneath this letter is the harvest. It's not yours, it's His. Use it wisely. I love you. Your father Samuel. Lucas didn't understand. Seeds? He dropped the letter. He picked up the first bundle of papers. They were shares, stock certificates, from a computer company he'd never heard of. A company Samuel had bought in the 1980s for pennies. It looked like trash. He picked up the second bundle. They were land titles from a tiny piece of land in the middle of nowhere, hundreds of miles away. Lucas rushed to the old computer, his hands typing clumsily. He searched for the name of the stock company. His heart stopped. The company hadn't gone bankrupt. It had been bought out by a tech giant, and those shares were worth. He had to read the number 3 times. They were worth a fortune. He called the city hall in the land title city. The voice on the other end sounded excited. You own this lot? Don't you know? The new interstate highway will run right over it. The government is paying. The man told him the amount. Lucas hung up the phone. He added up the numbers on the edge of an old piece of paper. Stocks plus bonds. The amount was. He fell to his knees. Right there, on the dusty office floor, the tears came. A cry. That wasn't of sadness. It wasn't even of relief. It was of astonishment. The amount wasn't enough to pay the debt. It was triple. The tragedy, the auction, the shame, everything had been prevented. The key in the coat, the box in the drawer. Samuel and God. They had a plan that spanned decades, a plan that waited for the exact moment, the last second. The miracle wasn't the money. The miracle was Providence. The miracle was the key. Calm, reflective tone of voice. Oh, my dear, what a story, isn't it? It brings a lump to our throat. Because we know Lucas. We are Lucas. How many times do we look at our lives and all we see is the auction date, the doctor's letter, the empty chair at the table, the silence on the phone? We see the problem, the insurmountable wall. But God, oh, God doesn't see the wall. God sees the key. Lucas was looking at debt. God was looking at an old coat hanging in a closet. Lucas was looking at despair. God was looking at a wooden box, stored for 30 years. You see, my son, God's providence, it's not done at the last minute. Our miracle often has been prepared for decades. It's there, stored, waiting. Sometimes the blessing is hidden in the place of our greatest pain. It was in his father's closet, in the coat that reminded Lucas of what he had lost. But it was there that the solution lay. Faith is not believing that God will do something. Faith is believing that He's already done. It's trusting that even if you don't see it, He has a plan. He planted seeds a long time ago, and in His time, oh, in His time, the harvest comes. And you? What is the closed box in your life today? That situation that seems impossible? That problem that humanly has no way out? Are you looking at the size of the debt, or are you looking with the eyes of faith for the coat where God has kept your key? I want to extend an invitation to you. Lucas's story is real in many ways, and I know that you have a story too. A moment when, at the last second, when all seemed lost, God appeared. Maybe not with a box of shares, but with a word, with a doctor, with forgiveness, with a peace that no one understood. Use the comments below. Let's make this place a wall of testimonies. What was the key God used in your life? Share your story. Leave your amen if you believe in this God of providence, and if this story spoke to your heart. Like this video. Help this message find another Lucas who may be, at this very moment, on their knees in the desert, needing to know that the key is already on the way. And, of course, subscribe here in our little corner so we can continue together, sharing these stories of faith. May God bless your home, your life, and all the keys that He, in His infinite love, has already kept for you. Rest in peace.